Support WrestleTalk!
Give us a subscribe. One of the biggest talking points coming out of WWE Fastlane this past Sunday was The Fiend making his big return to WWE in his new Kentucky Fried form, helping Alexa Bliss beat Randy Orton with wrestling's most suggestive pin. However, in a match that had fireballs, Randy Orton choking up black goo, Alexa Bliss trying to kill him by dropping lights on his head using only a mind, and a psycho clown returning from being burned alive, it was the pin at the end of the match that offended a certain Mrs. Orton, apparently. Posting on Twitter, Kim Orton sent Alexa Bliss a message saying, "You might have just up, little girl." This follows on from a deleted Orton post on Twitter where he said, "Apparently my wife doesn't care too much for Alexa Bliss. Maybe Soulja Boy should tell her it's fake." And according to Ringside News, remarkably, this is 100% a shoot. They add that Mr. Orton got heat from Mrs. Orton over the way the match finished, and were told he was in a bad way concerning how it went down. Mrs. Orton versus Alexa Bliss at WrestleMania confirmed? On to slightly more serious news now, and following from their outstanding lights out match from last week's AEW Dynamite, the lights are now shining brighter onto Thunder Rosa and Britt Baker, the latter of which cut a fantastic promo on this week's show on Mick Foley and Tony Khan. However, with Rosa being the victor of the match, many fans will be wondering about her AEW status now that NWA is making its return, which is the company she's actually contracted to. According to Quizzlemania champion Sean Ross Sapp, Rosa's NWA contract runs throughout the remainder of 2021. However, she will also be doing dates with AEW at the same time. She appeared at the most recent set of NWA tapings and will be at next week's Dark and Dynamite. Where she ends up following her contract expiring is a bit up in the air at the moment, but with those rumors circulating last year that she would end up in either NWA, AEW, or WWE, logic would dictate it'll be one of those three. However, this is pro wrestling and Big Show is currently in AEW, so who knows anymore? Meanwhile, over in NXT, we got the big news we've all been waiting for TakeOver Stand and Deliver. I'm yours. Rob freaking Zombie will be the show's theme song with the triumph of King Freak, a crypt of preservation and superstition, which is taken from his new and awesome album, The Lunar Injection Kool-Aid Eclipse Conspiracy. I know, you're all just as excited as I am for this. Sorry, what's that? Oh, they want to hear about the matches. The wrestling matches on the wrestling show, yeah. Yeah, no, I guess that makes sense. On night one, Io Shirai will defend her NXT Women's Championship against Raquel Gonzalez. Walter will be putting his NXT UK Championship on the line against Tommaso Ciampa. OMG, can't believe that's a real match. Really want that to happen. Can't wait to see it. And the newly vacated NXT Tag Team Championships will be up for grabs in a triple threat between MSK, Grizzled Young Vets, and Legado del Fantasma. Come on, the Vets! There will also be a North American Championship Gauntlet Eliminator, with the winner facing Johnny Gargano for the title on night 2. Also on night 2, Karrion Kross will take on Finn Balor for the NXT Championship. Adam Cole versus Kyle O'Reilly will be an unsanctioned match, and the NXT Cruiserweight Championship unification match will now be a ladder match between Santos Escobar and Jordan Devlin. Now, you're probably also wondering whether there'll be live reactions and reviews for those shows over on the WrestleTalk podcast channel, so let's just say watch this space. Now, before we get into the AEW review, I've got another name to tick off my list of who blew Mr. Davis up. Right. It's ringing. Was it you son of a botch?
I don't think that was me. No, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. Wait, when was this? No, that wasn't me.
Dang it! Maybe I'll try Larson next time. Maybe it was him, I don't know. Anyway, it's Thursday, you know what that means. It's time for my review of AEW Dynamite in about 5 minutes. The show opened with a match between Kenny Omega and Matt Sydal, which had been set up from last week's AEW Dark Elevation, where if Sydal pinned Omega, he'd get a future title shot. The added stip added a lot of drama to the match, particularly in the last couple of near falls when Sydal got reversals off the one-winged angel. However, in the end, Omega put him away to finish a really fun match. John Silver cut a promo to hype his main event with Darby Allin and hung out with his new best friend Hangman Page, who then quickly beat Cesar Bononi and his mustache in a short match. Lance Archer cut a promo on Sting, and Baker cut a promo on the rest of the women's division, specifically highlighting Thunder Rosa after their main event last week, and even Mick Foley because she became a hardcore legend in one night, while it took him 20 years, which the Mick has said stung him a little bit on Twitter. Well, if you weren't a big heel before, Baker, you're the biggest heel ever now by upsetting Mrs. Foley's baby boy. And if that wasn't enough promos for you, Christian Cage imparted some tag team knowledge to Dante Martin and Varsity Blondes, and then set up his in-ring debut against Frankie Kazarian of SCU. The 0408 TNA mark in me really marked down for this, and I had great flashbacks to their Genesis 07 ladder match. I'm genuinely very excited for this. And although they did get some tag team advice from one of the greatest tag team guys to ever do it, it didn't help Martin and Varsity Blondes as they lost to the newly formed pinnacle of FTR and Shawn Spears in a decent match. FTR cut a promo on Santana and Ortiz afterwards, and MJF got some words in on Chris Jericho, saying that next week they'll be getting some gold. Team Taz also got some promo time with Brian Cage uneasily saying that he was still on the same page as his teammates but didn't seem too convinced by it. And just when you thought there weren't enough promos on this show, QT Marshall got to say a few words. In fairness, this was a really solid promo from a man who hasn't really been given the chance to show off a lot of character on AEW Dynamite, and he really got over his issues with Cody Rhodes and the Nightmare Family. Although it was weird that he mentioned his wife that he's known since he was 8 years old, when his big storyline last year was that he was in a relationship with Ali. Consistency. In a nice touch, Cody came out from the back taking off his headset to add some realism to this, and next week they're going to have an exhibition match with Arn Anderson as the special guest referee. This was pretty good, and it's the first time that I've been fully invested in this QT Marshall storyline, and it started way before Revolution. But I was really in the mood for some wrestling by this point, and wrestling I was about to get. Teaming together for the first time in AEW since Fyter Fest in 2019, Laredo Kid and Lucha Bros took on the Young Bucks and Brandon Cutler. As the commentary team pointed out, there was a lot of champs in this match, as the Bucks are the AEW Tag Team Champions, the Lucha Bros are the AAA Tag Team Champions, and Laredo Kid only recently just lost his AAA Cruiserweight Championship. Poor Brandon Cutler. At least we know who's taking the pin in the match, eh? There were lots of lovely callbacks to the all-time classic between Ray Phoenix and Nick Jackson from Dynamite back when we could watch wrestling live and in person, and this was an insanely fun six-man tag. The Bucks looked to have it won by taking out Penta and Phoenix, but Kid hit a Spanish fly on Cutler for the win. After the match, Kenny Omega attacked Laredo Kid and then cut a promo on Matt and Nick Jackson for not joining him last week. This was amazing from Kenny, who really got over his unhinged champion persona, but also the real-life drama between all of the players, saying that he turned down the chance to go to greener pastures in New York, but he didn't choose AEW. He chose Matt and Nick Jackson, and they never picked him back. He offered up a too sweet again, but the Bucks chose to walk away, allowing the Lucha Brothers to take Omega out with the pile driver. This was all fabulous stuff, and it sets up Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers versus Lucha Bros and Laredo Kid for next week, which sounds excellent. Jade Cargill cut a promo on Red Velvet, and Cody and Brandy Rhodes are getting a reality TV show. And before you ask, no, I won't be watching it. Moxley and Eddie Kingston cut a promo on Bullet Club, and then Ty Conti surprisingly beat Nyla Rose in a really decent match. Look, I know that Conti is ranked #1 in the division, but she's been racking up those wins on Dark, and you're bound to get a lot of wins on Dark when there's 100 matches every week on Dark. Plus, Red Velvet was the #1 contender last week, so I don't think that counts for too much these days. Rose attacked Conti after the match, and Hikaru Shida ran down to make the save, only to be attacked by the Bunny. Matt Hardy cut a promo saying Bunny should have been in the women's title tournament, which is true, and a tag match was made for next week. It's nice to see new faces in the top title picture like Conti and Bunny, but kind of everyone is still talking about Baker and Rosa, so I feel like they also need to be in this mix as well. Best Friends versus Miro and Sabian will be an Arcade Anarchy match next week, which sounds like silly fun, and the main event was a corking match between Darby Allin and John Silver over the TNT Championship. No, please do tell me more about how AEW put too much focus on old veterans and ex-WWE guys. For a match with only 1 week build, there was a lot of drama here, particularly around that ticking timer for the end of the show and the possibility that this will all end in a draw. The resilient Allin kept kicking out or escaping Silver's power moves and only escaped with his title because Johnny Hungy's deep cover pushed Allin into the ropes. It was a rookie error that cost him, and Allin hit the code red for the win. I loved this match, and it's been made even more impressive by the fact that Allin revealed Silver hurt his shoulder badly during the match and now may be out injured. A brawl broke out at ringside between Hardy's group, Dark Order, Allin and Sting, which is a very Dynamite way to end off this episode of Dynamite. This company sure does love a big brawl to end off a broadcast. So that was this week's AEW Dynamite in about 5 minutes. Let me know what you thought of the show in the comments down below. Coming off the back of that terrific main event last week, this was always going to feel like a lesser episode, but it didn't feel like that much lesser. All of the in-ring action was great, the promo segments furthered storylines, and they got characters over. I really enjoyed this episode. It's amazing to watch a company whose base level of fine is 2 hours of great wrestling. So with that said, this was a totally fine 3 out of 5 middle of the road episode. But wait, do you hear that? It sounds like the winds have changed, and there are changes coming to WrestleTalk's Patreon. Here's Patreon Pete to tell you more.
Oh, hi there. I'm Patreon Pete, here to tell you about all the wonderful things you can find on WrestleTalk's Patreon page. Now, we've got an amazing little family of pledge hammers on Patreon, but there's always room for more. Now, there's lots to choose from, so let's start with the lowest tier of perks at $5 per month, the developmental deal tier. For just $5 a month, you get access to WrestleTalk Extra, an exclusive podcast where Ollie Davis and Luke Owen dive into a retro wrestling pay-per-view that you, the pledge hammers, get to choose, as well as access to the entire archive of old episodes, so you can go back and listen to them review shows such as WWE Money in the Bank 2011, ECW's December to Dismember, WCW Halloween Havoc 1995 featuring monster trucks, They Go Broom Broom, Didn't You Know, plus shows from Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, NXT, and loads more. Not only that, but you also get to compete in Wrestle League, our wrestling predictions league, not just against all the other pledge hammers, but against all of us at WrestleTalk as well. Each season of Wrestle League runs from one of the big 4 WWE pay-per-views to the next, so from Royal Rumble to WrestleMania, WrestleMania to SummerSlam, etc. And if you're so good at predicting Vince's last-minute booking changes that you come in first out of everybody, you can win yourself a £100 gift voucher to WrestleShop.com. Think of all the t-shirts and hoodies you get to rub in your friends' faces because you're better at predicting than they are. On top of that, you also get to submit your wrestling questions to our mailbag, which are answered weekly by Luke Owen and the lovely Denise Salcedo on the Friday episode of the WrestleTalk podcast. And you get the ability to vote on every poll on Patreon, including choosing the aforementioned WrestleTalk Extra show every month, as well as voting on which song one of the WrestleTalk gang has to humiliate themselves with each time they lose a season of Wrestle League.
But oh motto, am I what you want?
That is just the $5 tier.
Click the Patreon link on screen right now to find out more about that, and Laurie Blake will be joining me for the AEW Dynamite live review over on WrestleTalk podcast, so click the video on screen to set your reminder for that. And is Andrade returning as La Sombra? Click the other video on screen to find out more. I've been Luke Owen. Jam that jam.